family offices, and again, I think we're only in maybe the top of the second inning. We're still in the infancy of this. Have one thing that is critical to anybody that the other venture capital and private equity funds don't have, and they've got patient capital.
Welcome to AFO Wealth Management Forward, a podcast about finance, accounting, technology, and entrepreneurship. We apply our decades worth of experience and insight into what makes businesses work, so we can help others grow both personally and professionally. In this ever-evolving marketplace, we help accounting firms and financial advisors grow their practice through the adoption of holistic wealth management services. Learn from industry leaders and subject matter experts to unlock the secrets of their success. A podcast that shows people and companies the transformative power of technology so they don't fear it, but instead harness it. Don't fight the robots, team up with them. And here are your hosts, Rory Henry, Director of Business Development, and CEO Rob Santos of Arrowroot Family Office.
All right, hi everyone. Today, Rob and I will be talking with the founder and CEO of Diamond Wealth. Diamond Wealth is a boutique financial services firm that focuses exclusively on unique goals and objectives of family offices. They represent over 100 single-family offices ranging in size from $250 million to $30 billion. Our guest today started Diamond Wealth back in 2007. He is a chairman of the advisory board at Stanford University, as well as a chair for Tiger 21, a premier peer-to-peer network for individuals looking to improve their investment acumen. So with all that being said, we're very excited to introduce Ron Diamond. Ron, how are you doing today?
Terrific. Glad to be here. Thank you.
All right, Rob.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, Ron, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day today and speaking with Rory and myself. To kick things off, I think everybody would love to hear about your background, as well as maybe a brief outline describing Diamond Wealth and what you all have built over there and what you do.
Well, I graduated in Northwestern. My first job was Drexel Burnham. So I felt I was going to be at Drexel for 40 years. And I remember vividly, I was in the room when Fred Joseph announced Drexel's going bankrupt. And, I was 24 years old. I didn't really have any stock options. But my takeaway from that, I'm watching people in their 60s and 70s, literally like many of them lost all of their money. And my takeaway from that, because remember, Drexel back in the day was like Goldman on steroids. And my takeaway was, if Drexel could go under, anybody can go under. So I will always be loyal to people, but I would never be loyal to a firm, because if Drexel could do that, anybody could do that. So I started a hedge fund. So that's kind of how I started it. Started a hedge fund. We ran about $250 million. Started it in 1990, which was relatively early in the hedge fund space. We were good stock pickers, but we also had luck because we had tailwinds behind us. We never had huge returns, but we beat the S&P 10 out of 10 years. And I sold the company, took a year off, did some traveling, got into a whole bunch of different meditation, yoga, whatever. And then I started investing. And how I got into this space with Diamond Wealth was, my thought process was pretty simple. In the hedge fund, they didn't call them family offices back in the 90s. They called them rich people. So there's a bunch of rich people who are now called family offices. So I figured, look, if I could put in $1 million or $2 million into a deal, and I can gobble together 98 million from these rich people or family offices, I'll get better deal flow and execution. So that's really how it started. So it wasn't a business. It was a way for me to get better deal flow and execution, because if I could take down 100 million, I'll be the first or second call rather than the 13th or 14th call. So that's how the business started.
That makes total sense. And a goal of Diamond Wealth is kind of to create a community of family offices. Ron, you've stated. Can you kind of go into detail about these best practices and how the family offices work together?
Yeah. So, I'll talk specifically about what we do, and then what I'm trying to create now at Stanford University. Because look, the model is flawed. So everyone, you hear the term family office. I gave a lecture at Stanford. I had $5 billion patriarchs on the panel. I said, "What's the family office and why did you create it?" 5 completely different answers. And nobody was right. Nobody was wrong. It's just 5 different answers. And that's part of the problem of the industry. So what I found was that in general, people talk about family offices, but the model actually doesn't work, because only 25% of family offices make it to the second generation. 10% make it to the third, and 5% make it to the fourth. So this whole model is flawed. And the reason it's flawed is because when somebody has a liquidity event, what they do is the first thing they want to do, and again, I'm generalizing, but in general, they want to invest in a sexy cannabis deal or a venture capital deal or real estate or private equity deal. That's not the first thing you have to do. You have to go to an estate planning attorney, which is boring, and get everything structured. It's like the foundation of a house. So you've also got huge amounts of capital. There's roughly $10 trillion in the family office world. And then you combine that with the fact that there's about 65 trillion that's moving downstream from the baby boomers to the next gen in the next 10 years. It's massive and it's growing exponentially, but it's not necessarily sophisticated, because think about it. Yes, Stephen Cohen and George Soros have family offices, but most of the people at family offices, they've made their money selling Beanie Babies or 5 Hour Energy or Guess Jeans or Giorgio perfume or a chain of gas stations. So the industry from a macro standpoint, and this is the lens through which I look at it, is very inefficient, very fragmented, and very siloed. And I speak at a lot of these family office conferences. Nobody comes to hear me speak. They come to meet other family offices. And what happens oftentimes is the audience are other service providers. So you have these wealthy families who made their money in creating widgets, and they're in silos, and they don't necessarily have the bandwidth to or the cohesiveness to really collaborate and work together. So what we're doing at Stanford, I teach at Stanford, and I chair the advisory board for the Disruptive Technology Program. And one of the things we're trying to do is we're basically saying to an industry, look, this is private equity and venture capital in the early 80s. So in the early 80s, private equity and venture capital basically disrupted the public markets because it was a better model, right? I mean, every 90 days, you got to report to a guy like me or somebody who's running an analyst. That's not a way to run a company. You can't do that. So private equity and venture capital was a much better model. The problem is that they bastardized the business. And again, I'm generalizing. So this is not everybody, but it became an AUM game. So what should be a $200 million fund to $2 billion fund? What should be a $2 billion fund to $20 billion fund? And they realize you can make money on the 2%. So they bastardized it. And then you combine that with the fact that how they're incented is they're incented to flip companies every 3 to 5 years. Family offices, and again, I think we're only in maybe the top of the second inning. We're still in the infancy of this. Have one thing that is critical to anybody that the other venture capital and private equity funds don't have, and they've got patient capital. They don't have to sell. They could, IRR is a moot point. So if you've got a company, they can keep it. So what we're trying to create at Stanford is basically an ecosystem where we could make family offices less fragmented, more professional, more institutional, and provide a network where they could share deal flow and basically share best practices.
Absolutely. And so, you mentioned it early on in what you just said with, I think there's something only 25% of family offices make it to the second generation. Yep. What are some strategies that Diamond Wealth uses to increase the likelihood that the family office will continue on and be able to take advantage of some of these efficiencies that you all are kind of spearheading?
Well, it has nothing to do with creating alpha, right? I mean, look, it's not easy to make money. It's complicated, but making money is not the hard part. I mean, the families that make it 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 generations, you start with the foundation, which is the estate plan. And the estate plan has to work. And then once you have the estate plan, you also have to have a succession plan. And most families don't think that far out. So if you think about it, probably 50% of the family offices that are in existence today started after the crash. And they started because people, who made their money selling widgets, put their money in a hedge fund, and all of a sudden, a hedge fund put up gates. What are gates? It was an ability for a hedge fund to say you can't sell. Well, they didn't realize that. So a lot of the reason that these family offices have exploded over the last 10 years has to do with trust. And the first, second, third thing that family offices want to know when they work with you is, can they trust you? And then the fourth thing is, oh, okay, what's your track record? What's your background? What's your strategy? It's flipped with the institutions. And so I think that's the main reason what drove, and it all has to come back to alignment of interest. Trust and alignment of interest that's why family offices have exploded over the past decade.
Yeah, I mean, and you've talked about, this bastardization by private equity firms and hedge funds, and you say that the family office will be chipping away at them. Can you kind of describe the vision here for what you see in the next 5
Well,
to
let's
10
look
years?
at, okay, let's say you're a bright kid you go to Stanford, you're a bright kid, you're 25 and you got a great idea. Right, previously what you do is you go to NEA or Sequoia, or you go to one of the big venture capital firms and you get backed. That is not a great model, because what happened is, let's say you got that technology, you now are one of 1/20th of their portfolio companies. They are going to sell you not when it's best to sell your company, because it might take 3 years to really make traction, or it might take 4 years. They're going to sell you when it's best in their best interest. So there's an inherent conflict of interest, and the speed at which they have to turn it over. They may sell your company right when you're about to take off, because they're looking to start fund 2. So the whole alignment of interest, and that's really the value that the family offices offer, because at the end of the day, by having patient capital, let's say, Rob, you have a great idea and a great technology, but it takes 4 years to get off the ground. Well, if you're not making any money in 4 years, most of the venture capital firms are just going to say, it was a dud, it didn't work. A family office might say, you know what, this might work, and I'll stick with it. So if you look at Jeff Bezos gave a speech once, and he said something really interesting. He said one of the reasons, I mean, he's a brilliant guy, but one of the reasons he's had the success he had, he goes, I've got a 10-year time frame. All the private equity and venture capital guys, they've got a 3 to 5 year time frame. My time frame is 10 years or even more. So if you look at it, Elon Musk and Bezos, they're in the space, and I mean, space is a 20-year time frame, but they could afford to do that. So I just think it all comes back to an alignment of interest, and I do think that family offices, they're not going to ever replace private equity or venture capital, because those are massive markets and they're necessary markets. But as people become more educated, as these family offices become more professional and more institutionalized, the family offices will slowly chip away at the market share for private equity and venture capital.
I mean, how is that resonating in the marketplace right now, Ron? Do you see founders more adept as far as listening to family offices and partnering with you guys instead of taking VC money?
Well, that's a good question. So from a macro standpoint, the answer is no. And that's what we're trying to create at Stanford. We're trying to create an ecosystem where people understand, okay, my options are not just to go to NEA or Sequoia. My options are, maybe it's good to work with a family office too. The problem is that the rich people don't know the smart people, and the smart people don't know the rich people. So what I mean by that is, you got these grads from Stanford or whatever school, and they've got these great ideas, but they don't know how to access family offices. Right now, I could look up on Google and tell you the top 250 venture capital or private equity firms. It's listed. You can't do that for family offices. So it's very opaque, and it's an area.
So it seems like you guys have a branding problem.
Well, family offices in general, yes, they do have it does have a branding problem, but they have a branding problem because a lot of it, it's their own fault. Because again, a lot of these, the biggest trend over the past 5 years has been direct investing, right? I want to do direct investing. Okay, why? Because I don't want to pay 220. Well, that's a bad reason to make an investment. Okay, so if I say, and I'll say to somebody, so if I could get you pay 220 and you make 10% on your money, or you pay 110 and you make 0% on your money, what would you? It's a rhetorical question. Mm-hmm. The problem is that post-crash, pre-pandemic, everything went up. So private equity went up, venture capital went up, stock market went up, real estate went up. So these people who made these direct investments, they all worked. So what do you need these smart guys for? Well, you do. So as we head into a recession, a lot of these people will be way over their skis. And how I think it's going to play out in the industry is, a lot of these single family offices are going to realize, you know what, there is a skill set to doing private equity or doing venture capital. And the guy was a CFO of my company where I made my money, maybe he's not the right guy to pick the companies to invest in. So it's a totally different skill set. So I think you're going to see some massive changes in the industry. But again, all of the major banks, all the law firms, all the accounting firms, all the marketing, they're all starting family office divisions. And it's, it's simple. That's where the money is.
Absolutely. And, you touched on it earlier about the greatest wealth transfer in kind of history.
Yeah,
we call it the silver tsunami.
We call it the silver tsunami. And so, how do you see, in particular, what you're working on at Stanford and in your business, that, that kind of relationship between, these generations that are shifting wealth and responsibility to these next generations? How do you see that working in the landscape of kind of technology, added technology capabilities, analytics capabilities, potentially not needing as much staff to be able to do all of those things? How do you see that roadmap being able to be efficient for folks that you all work with?
Well, I think COVID showed that, look, I mean, I'm doing this interview from my house. I mean, I never worked out of my house ever. And I've been in my house for the last year and a half. So technology enables it. So yes, I mean, it's great that we could do Zoom, but it still sucks. I mean, it's just not, you do 5 Zoom calls a day and it's not the same. I mean, we're doing this interview over Zoom, which is great. It would be 1,000 times better in person. It just, we're social
Or after
animals.
a Cubs game, right, Ron?
Or a Cubs game. I'm bitter about that. But we're social animals and we're not supposed to be isolated in these silos. And I think to answer your question, technology, it's mind-boggling. So at Stanford, I heard a professor gave a lecture and he had a picture, he put a drawing, he had a picture of a fire, a picture of a wheel, the word internet, and then the word blockchain. And what he was saying was that as transformative as the fire was for people getting out of caves, and as transformative as the wheel was for making people be able to move, the internet had a massive change, but blockchain going forward is going to have an even bigger change than the internet. So you've got technology right now where, I mean, when I went to college, we had a computer room where I shared it with 25 other people. We never had personal computers. I had a typewriter in college. My kids don't even know what a typewriter is. So I think the explosion of technology has been phenomenal. It's actually helped to exacerbate the reason that there's so much growth. You can make a lot of money really quickly because of technology. So I think there's a lot of tremendous aspects of it that are going to help. I also think there's a downside because I think the phone is going to be the new smoking. I've got 2 daughters who are 17 and 20, and it's bad. It's bad for them socially. It's bad for them mentally. They need to make eye contact with people. So the technology is terrific. It enables you to do stuff, but you can't let the technology own you. And I think that that's what's happening to this generation. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
And we're seeing that friction between generations already with legacy family offices that are more familiar in relationship-based decision making, maybe a slower pace of some decision making, or at least staff-based, and a younger generation which may rely on what an output of a data or an algorithm may tell you. And so we're seeing friction in the marketplace there, and unclear. There's obviously a tremendous opportunity with what's going on here, but we're finding a lot of people and a lot of folks who take our program find difficulty picking which technology solution is going to be the right one and which one's going to stick around. Do they need to spend a tremendous amount of time and effort learning this new system when something better or a blockchain or something may come up and disrupt it in 6 months, and now they have to do something else?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And again, it just, the rate at which technology is growing it's mind-boggling. I mean, if you look at it, you go back to the Industrial Revolution, I would argue that the generation, I'm 57, the generation between me and my children, there has been a greater change than any generation going back up into the Industrial Revolution. Because again, I had a computer. There was no I didn't have a computer. I had a typewriter. There was no internet. It's a totally different animal. And the technology, because of the internet and because of computers, changed everything. So just the difference between like my generation and my parents. Okay, yeah, my parents, they didn't wear seatbelts when because they didn't know they needed to. They didn't wear suntan lotion. They didn't know. We wear suntan lotion and we wear seatbelts now. That's not a huge difference, right? With black and white TV, we had color TV, whatever. Now it's mind-boggling, and how much it's changed. So I just think the change is just so massive, and it's exciting, but you have to make sure that you own the technology doesn't own you. And I think too many of us, and I'm guilty of it too many times, that you hear a click, it's like Pavlov's dog. Who's the text from? Who's the email from? Maybe I need to get this. You don't. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, it's a dopamine distributor, the phone, the digital device. Kind of shifting topics here, Ron. Speaking about the younger generation, they're really looking into impact investing, and we kind of want to touch on, or have you touch on, how big a role that plays with Diamond Wealth and what you're seeing kind of out there in the family office landscape.
So right now, roughly, it plays big. Roughly a third of family offices invest in impact investing. In the next 3 to 5 years, it's probably going to go up to 50%. So when I was younger, I never looked at the back of a can to see where it was made. I never questioned how they treated their employees. It wasn't that I was a bad person. I just didn't think like that. Now people want to know who makes it, how do they treat their employees, do they pollute, what's their carbon footprint? And the impact investing, it's driven by the millennials up, not from the older generations down. And I think it's a trend that's going to make huge difference. And now you're seeing more and more studies that it used to be where you take a couple percentage points lower return and okay, but I'm doing good for the world. So that's okay. And it used to be, just don't invest in tobacco companies or liquor companies. That was kind of, don't do that. But they've shown studies now that you don't have to give a forfeit return to get performance. And I think it's going to be very interesting. The millennials, they're driving this, but people, because everything is so at any piece of information you need, you just go to Google and you get anything. So people know everything about anybody at any time, which is good, but it also means that it's going to force I lost my train of thought for this. I was
companies
talking about, I forgot where I was.
You're talking about impact investing, and it would maybe force companies to change. The internet's at your fingertips.
Yeah, so it's forcing them to change, and it's a good thing because people are doing good. Part of impact investing, though, there's an optics part of it, because part of it is BS. I mean, part of it's optics, right? You're an impact investing fund. Well, who isn't, right? I mean, I don't want to blow up the world either. So it doesn't make you blow impact investing fund. So it's nuanced, but I do think that it is real. It's growing exponentially, and it's going to get exponentially larger.
Wonderful. And, we also, as we mentioned when we were introducing you, you're chairman of Tiger 21. Could you maybe speak to, the benefits of that peer-to-peer learning and networking for the high net worth, and how that's really been a value add for your peers in that organization?
Tiger 21 is phenomenal. And, I never did peer-to-peer. So like when I was younger, I never did YPO or Vistage because I always thought I was too busy. And I didn't really understand the value of peer-to-peer. I do now. I get it. So Tiger is an amazing organization. It's like a personal board of advisors, right? I mean, it basically, and there's certain things you could talk about with, everyone's got an NDA, nobody has an agenda, but you're talking around 15 other people. Groups are typically with 15 people. And I chair 2 of the groups in Chicago. And I'm also going to be chairing the family office group, which we're just going to be launching at Tiger the next month or so. But again, everyone's got blind spots. So you made your money in software, so you're really good at software. doesn't mean you know anything about estate planning. Doesn't mean doesn't mean you're way too concentrated or not concentrated enough. So what Tiger does is it looks at everything holistically. It's not just about investments. We talk about a whole bunch of different things. We're all people. We all, I have it in my meetings, I have the picture of the iceberg where people see the top 5%, which is the nice car, country club, nice house, but the 95%, like sleepless nights, a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, business almost went under, whatever. That's the stuff we really talk about at Tiger. And I think that's why it's so powerful, because when you leave the room, now you need to project this aura of who you are, but in the room, it's just authentic. And I think the value, in my opinion, with Tiger, it's a brilliant organization started by Michael Sonnenfeld. It just has to do with authenticity. People are real. And you know what? I don't care how rich you are. The guy next to you is richer. And I don't care how, successful your business is. The guy next to you is more successful. And again, we're all, at the end of the day, and I say this all the time, we're all in this together, right? We're all trying to improve. We're all trying to learn. We're all trying to get better. We're all trying to, whatever you call it, seek enlightenment or whatever your ultimate goal is. But that's what peer-to-peer groups do. And that's what Tiger does a tremendous job of, is basically facilitating interaction with people where you're showing vulnerability. And I used to think being vulnerable is weakness. Being vulnerable is a strength. And I would not have said that 5 years ago.
Wow. Yeah, and you talked about Tiger 21 looking at things holistically. We have a program here at Rory Family Office called AFO Wealth Management Forward that teaches accounting firms how to implement holistic wealth management services. Looking at an accounting firm and having them learn how to adopt holistic wealth management services. As a person who operates a wealth management firm yourself, what's some advice that you could provide to these accounting firms?
Well, I think you guys are doing a great job. And I think the service you're offering is terrific, because accounting firms need to be much more holistic. Because again, at the end of the day, when G1 passes, they're going to change money managers, they're going to change accountants, they're going to, so you want to have as many touch points as possible. And I think what you guys are doing is terrific. And it's a model that will be emulated because it's needed. So people are looking at things not from a transactional standpoint, they're looking at things holistically. And that's what that's a niche you guys have created. And I think it's going to grow exponentially.
All right. Rob, do you have
Yeah.
any other questions here for Ron?
Ron, I just want to thank you very much. Appreciate your time. We know it is very valuable.
I appreciate your time.
We're really, really appreciative of it. And we're going to continue to share all the insights that you provide out there. And thank you for all your leadership and all these various efforts. And we hope to have you back on the show sometime soon.
I'm available 24/7. If I can help in any way, let me know.
Thanks so much.
Rob.
All opinions expressed by Rob Santos and Rory Henry on this website podcast interview are solely their opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Arrowroot Family Office LLC or their parent company or affiliates, and may have been previously disseminated on television, radio, internet, or another medium. You should not treat any opinion expressed by anyone as a specific inducement to make a particular investment or follow a particular strategy, but only as an expression of their opinions. Past performance is not indicative of future results.